Hello, everyone. Welcome to Recycling. I'm Beth York with ZwiftWatch.tv.
And I'm Taya Freestead with Volume Fit. Welcome to Recycling, your week roundup of adventures in cycling.
Yeah, so there's a lot to talk about, but in our perusing of the interwebs, we found a couple interesting things that happened over the year. You know, it's the time of year where we take a look back.
Some very funny stories indeed. Those are really a good way, I guess, to start the show this week. Some funny stories that we saw. My favorite one here about a cyclist who, well, I guess it's not funny that he got hit by lightning, but it's interesting that what saved his life was his headphones. He was wearing headphones while cycling, and so that's where the electric current went through and therefore saved him from getting it.
That's incredible. There's so many things there where if you looked up your chances of getting struck by lightning, then your chances of getting struck by lightning on a moving bicycle, and then your chance of getting struck by lightning and having your headphones absorb the shock. I mean, this guy should get a lottery ticket. I mean, are you kidding me? This guy has the luck of what? I mean, how on earth does all that stuff happen? It's pretty crazy, but so now if you see me riding and I have earbuds in, you'll know why.
That's right, yeah.
For directions and also for protection for surges.
Apparently he was literally smoking on the side of the street when people found him.
Oh gosh. Oh my gosh. Can you imagine if you came upon that, what your reaction would be? Oh my gosh. I don't do well with the emergency situations like that.
No.
Oh, and then this one cracked me up. The guy that was checking out a attractive woman cyclist in short shorts and a bikini top, and he lost control of his vehicle and kind of crashed into a mailbox. So we feel like that's kind of a justice, except he had the nerve to go back and find where she worked and demand that she pay for the damages.
Oh gosh, so. Yeah, that's distracted driving. You're distracting me. Oh gosh, no.
Yeah, isn't that insane?
The other one that I was laughing out loud and people thought I was nuts because I was just laughing on my own. This guy took his bike to a bike shop, and when he called up to ask the status of his bike, is it ready? I guess to be fixed, right? And the person at the store said, wait, but you told us to throw your bike away. And so we did. They threw the bike away.
Oh, God. Bad.
How does that even happen?
Yeah, I would have been so, I don't even know how you would even respond to that. It's like, what? Wait. That's quite a misunderstanding. I have a feeling he's not going back to that bike shop ever. Did he get damages? Did he sue, or I didn't see if there was any follow up?
No, I didn't. I didn't see the follow up, but apparently the shop owner produced a recording of a phone call.
Oh,
in which he said that the bike was to be thrown away. It's very odd. We'll post it in the comments so you can read it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'd have to look a little closer at that one. Oh my goodness. Well, and then there's these wacky stories, and not that this next one isn't a wacky story, but it's actually just has a little bit of a different angle. You want to start us off with that one?
So this is somebody who works for Strava, and this guy was at a Rafa cycling club, the Rafa cycling club in San Francisco, and he saw somebody getting a bike from the store and stealing it. So he hopped on his bike and he chased after with another person from the store. And so they chased after the thief. They were able to catch the thief, and then this guy published his ride, of course, on Strava. So it became this epic popular ride, the chase, and they were able to catch the thief and turned him to the police.
Yeah, that's a good story too. And I think the guy that chased him was a Cat 1 racer or something. So he kind of picked the wrong bike shop with the wrong person who could actually chase him down. You know, it's yeah. So Wow. Oh, this is not related to cycling, but did you see the post that someone made with the marbles?
That post is so perfect
Oh
for
my gosh.
explaining to people who are not familiar with e-racing, cycling, in Zwift, for example. That is such a great video.
So we'll post the link as well, and here's a little clip of it. But we don't really have much time to listen to it. But basically, the guy is giving the play-by-play of these marbles rolling through sand, and to us, it's comical because we know we have enough self-awareness as Zwifters who race on Zwift that we care very much. We want this to be streamed. We want to be able to see our friends race. But people outside of that little bubble, they do not care. It's like the weirdest thing.
Yeah.
So the person who posted that marble video was kind of like going, "This is what my Zwift stories sound like to my husband."
There goes the blue marble, followed by the red marble, and now they're
Right.
making a turn, and it's just these colorful dots going through some
It-
random path.
It's awesome. It's awesome. But it's probably a good point too. There's a lot of people who are new to the Zwift platform, a lot of people who are new to racing, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But basically, racing on Zwift takes your effort and pits your effort against other people within the game. And the way that works is that you have a certain amount of watts that you can put over the course, and that gets divided by your weight in kilograms, and your watts per kilogram in the race, in the environment, move you through the world at different speeds. So there's algorithms and math, and we just pedal, and well, just like in the real world, we're not actually doing the math, but because it is a virtual environment, the game is basing that calculation over our watts per kilogram, and that's how we move through the world. But there are now many races that are coming, and more people are getting out on Zwift. So you register with Zwift Power, you sign up for some races, and right now, Taya, we have a lot of choices in
It's
races.
interesting. When I started Zwifting about 2.5 years ago, it was all about the group rides. Group rides, actually, there weren't even that many, but group rides started to get big. And now, very recently, I would say, in the last couple of months, it seems that there has been an explosion of racing. I mean, racing has been building up, right, throughout the life of Zwift. But just in the last month alone, there has been a plethora of options for races. And
Yeah.
it's getting big, too. It's getting to be big events, series of races that you can go to, and they culminate in a live event, or you get prizes for it. And why don't we talk a little bit about those, Beth?
Yeah, so I mean, there have been a number of races, pretty much every hour of the day it seems like you can race, and people have been putting on races, and the organizers have been putting on races. And I think it's starting to get more attention because the tide is rising, right? More and more people are showing up, and race promoters are saying, like CVR is a race promoter, and now Zwift is getting into the game. They're saying, well, let's put together a series of racers, and let's really put these racers to the task. Let's put them up on side by side in real world, and give them points, and let's have some skin in the game. 6 months ago, yeah, it's bragging rights, yeah, it's some rankings in Zwift Power, but it's more now about sort of completing a series and getting the points, because there's actually a carrot dangling at the end of the road. So it's
right. In addition to that, it's also becoming, because it's becoming more and more popular, there has been steps taken to make it so that it is, quote, legitimate. And so in other words, you see a lot of, people have different setups, they have different things. We're not going to get into a lot of detail, but the advantage of having a live event versus just the race is to sort of validate that what people are putting out on course from their basements, from their homes, is really what they can put out if they have, let's say, a good setup with a power meter. And so it's becoming more and more complex as it's been evolving.
Right. Well, and I mean, just with our experience with CVR in September, that, you show up and you step on a scale and
Yeah.
you like,
Check your height.
yeah, it was legitimate because these factors do weigh into how fast you move through the game. And
I feel
and I
like
think
we
that
should have a badge, Beth.
we do.
Legit.
We do. Legit badge. I was saying we have a CVR badge, but we do have a legit badge. And, and I think that that's what part of what CVR is going to start to mean is that you've been legitimate. And there's other sort of, things that will legitimize those things too. But we're not the judges of that. We're not the judges of any of that. I think that, but it is personally validating because you can doubt yourself. If you have a good race, you're like, oh gosh, was that really, if you have a, bad race, you're like, oh, I had a bad race. But the other thing, I think the reason why you and I are noticing these additional racing opportunities is because a lot of the new racing opportunities are targeted to us as women.
Right.
And that, we've talked in the past about the overnight success of Team Fearless. That was launched right on the heels of Zwift Academy. And, it was like lightning in a bottle. Like, everyone was kind of wondering what to do. And, and the year prior after Zwift Academy, that's when I joined a team because I was like, what's next? Like I had this fitness and what am I going to do with it?
Right.
And, and that's kind of what happened with Fearless. And there's a group of really engaged women who are starting races that are complementing some of the existing races, which is really exciting. And I'll throw a little plug into the team that I just joined, Vixen, Velocity Vixen just launched to give Fearless some competition because they are.
Because you need that. That's right.
You need that. Well, they give everyone competition, right? So, it's been interesting. But the one thing too, though, with all of these racing options, as we see more and more women coming to the field, we know it's a rising tide, and the Zwift eCrit we know was rebooted, and the participation had a massive jump. And, we can talk about why we think that might be, but, part of the reason I think is that it was messaged a little more approachable, that women were like, oh, okay, this isn't going to, I can show up. I might not be 4.0 watts per kilogram category A racer, but okay, I'll show up. So it kind of became a little more approachable, at least on the women's side, and more women showed up. So I'm so psyched that we're here in numbers and we're showing that. So that's cool.
It's excellent. So speaking of racing,
yes,
what I have been wondering as a coach and as an athlete, I see all of the movement towards racing. I think the one thing that Zwift is bringing to the table here is the opportunity to race all the time. Yes. And we're talking about, because in real life, some people might race a lot, but it's not as many, you don't have the many opportunities that you do in Zwift, for example. Plus, I don't think you see a lot of cyclists who are not as experienced racing outdoors. So Zwift is changing that in that anyone can race at any time, and there are so many options, and I think a lot of people feel enticed to do it. So the question becomes, from a training standpoint, how much racing is too much? Right.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a question as I've been putting my schedule together because I want to do it all, right? Like I'm like, oh, I want to do that race.
It's
and
exciting.
Then my friend's doing that race. Yeah. And when we're competitive people by nature, we want to get out there and get our workouts on. And I have to be particularly careful because I think I've shared in the past, I tend to overtrain. And that could come through racing or it could come through, just sort of, over ambitious training plan. But yeah, so when, and this time of year too, at least in the Northern Hemisphere, we kind of, the body does need to kind of, go back and rejuvenate and you can come back stronger. And, so you can talk a little bit about sort of the training plans, because training plans can incorporate racing and I think many do, but it should be put together in a complete puzzle with some specificity. Did I say that word right? Specificity.
Yeah, that's right.
What are your thoughts? I mean, what?
A couple of things come to mind, right? A couple of things come to mind. I would say that And the experts will all agree that the best approach to a training plan, and you think of a training plan in the course of a year, is to have the different phases so that you're ready for the races that you're preparing for. So you have, let's say, an A race that we call it. It's the big race of the year, and you want to peak for that race. And so you have all the steps and phases to get there. So it's called periodization, for example, right? So that's one of the ways of calling it. So then the phases that you have is you prepare to train, you establish, then there's the base training, establishing basic abilities. Then you have the build phase, you have the peak phase, and the race phase. And then once you're done with that race phase, you're back into a transition phase. So that is when you recover both physically and mentally, because it's not just physically. If you race all year round, high intensity, and you don't give yourself the chance to recover physically and mentally, your body goes into breakdown mode. The other things you can do, and let's say, so that's the perfect world, right? You do all of that building and you have a training plan for the year. Now, you're in this world of Zwift where there's all these chances to race and you want to do it. Can you do it? You can do it. But what is going to be really hard to do is to treat every race as an A race, in my example. So you're not going to have time to build and taper to race and have your best performance and then do it all over again next week and the following week and the following week for 10 weeks. So it is something that you're going to end up incorporating that into your training plan, but it's not going to be a super performance, if you will.
I think that's the thing, the measured, to have a realistic expectation of it, where it's sort of like, you're out of, I think in the crits example, 10, there's 7 that count, whatever the numbers are. But, you're going to have races that are going to not be your quote A performance. And this isn't categories we're talking about. We're talking about your best foot forward. So I think that it would be unreasonable for you to expect you could repeat your top performance week over week over week is kind of the point that you're making.
And perhaps somebody wants to treat January and February as their racing period for the year. Why not? Right? You could do that too. You want to have a winter season. That's right. I'm going to race in the winter, and then I'll take a break in the spring and do something else and go do some Grand Fondos or whatnot. So I guess really the message is to have some planning behind it, right? To really be smart about going out and just racing all the time. Because the other thing about just racing and not having some specific training and taper baked in is you're going to end up plateauing over time. You're going to end up having poor performance over time. So well, I think too what we're seeing too is we're seeing more opportunities, training, and a lot of coaches are on the platform. I finally figured out what I'm going to do. Well, one thing I'm going to do next year. So this is like, because in the last episode, you still hadn't decided.
I know. And I found something, and I texted my husband this morning saying, what do we have on July, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh, that's only like 270 days away. Like, I have no idea. And I'm like, it's my day. I've decided. So I found this triathlon, and I think I've shared that I've retired from triathlons because of the running portion after having multiple knee surgeries. But this particular triathlon is more like it's like an iron level sort of duration race, but the run portion is up again, my friend Mount Washington, going back up Mount Washington because it's there, right?
Yes.
But that's in July. So so now that I've cut, that's kind of like my marquee piece, right? So I'm going to start building around that what I want to do, and I'll probably do an aqua bike as training leading up to it. I'm going to do some other sort of hiking and climbing. So I'm backing my schedule around that, and from a coaching perspective, I'm looking for a triathlon coach because of the 3 disciplines. I'm rather than a cycling coach. So I think when you're actually like thinking about what your season looks like, what you're going to do, and you think about the planning and the racing, it gets back to that word I have a hard time with, specificity, that your training plan matches your goals and your objectives.
Sure, for sure.
And you recently changed coaches, right?
I did, yes. So, my reason was slightly different. spent the first couple of years of my cycling life building endurance, of course, because I didn't ride at all. I didn't ride 20 miles when I started.
Right.
It was, and focusing on long events. So endurance, of course, you work on range as well in terms of VO2, et cetera, but it was more focused on endurance in long events, 100 plus, 150, 175 mile events,
Yep.
and some 100K gravel races. But what happens is over time, your body gets used to the training that you're doing. So if there isn't changes in variation, then again, going back to that plateau that I mentioned, you need to always have dynamic changes in your plan. And so for me, it was twofold. It was one, training the same way for a long time, and two, a changing focus. Because for 2018, I want to change completely what I'm going to be focusing on. I want to do short races, intense ones. I want to go for the fast twitch muscles. My plan is to race crits, is to race hilly courses, outdoors. If I do a long race, it's going to be something that has a steep hill on it or several hills. Something's going to be a climbing race. So with that in mind, I found that a changing coach would make sense, and somebody more suitable to helping me with those aspects of the training would be more appropriate.
Right. Right. Yeah, no, I think that's a good choice. I mean, picking what you want to do and knowing where you need to go next.
Right.
And you've recently launched, I guess from your foundation of endurance, you've launched with some other coaches, the Endurance Lab. So that's kind of incorporating Zwift training. What is the Endurance Lab? I took part of the 4-week sort of sample, which was life was crazy, so I didn't get the full experience. So what's the Endurance Lab doing in this next phase here?
Yeah, so the Endurance Lab is group coaching, and of course there are add-on services as one-on-one coaching as well. So it's myself and other coaches that a lot of you from Zwift know about. But it's not only in Zwift. It is targeted to other platforms as well. So people get their training plans that they can use in any training platform, Trainer Road, for example, right? Or if they want to do it outside with their Garmins and Wahoos, et cetera, is suitable for that. But the next Endurance Lab that's coming up is going to be 6 weeks, and it's going to be targeted to that transition phase that I mentioned earlier, which is a post-season, but also pre-season. So you're, let's say, 3-4 months away from your races, and that's for people in the Southern Hemisphere, or you just finished your season and you're now transitioning into recovering but building strength. So that's going to be a lab that will focus on building strength and endurance. Group coaching, everybody's going to have access to not only all the coaches in the lab to ask questions, but also they can have access to a nutritional therapist and a mental skills coach. And of course, then there's the interaction with all the other participants in the lab and the rides that we do in Zwift, group workouts, etc.
No, that's great. That's really fun. I think that so much of just in general, the whole, whether it's the racing that is stimulating the coaching or the coaching is stimulating the racing. I mean, there's just sort of this, bunch of activity heading into the winter with so many options, and it's exciting. Also launched this week was the CVR League and the CVR training. I did race the first race on Tuesday. The way that the league races are running is that there are 8 races over the course of the day, and you can pick. They happen every 3 hours, and you can pick the one that suits you. So that was
nice
very
to have
helpful.
the flexibility. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I mentioned the races, which is the league, which is a little bit different than the training. But they accomplish a couple different things, and I think they launch at the same time, so it created a little bit of confusion, which I know they're working on through their Facebook pages, communicating and answering questions. But I did the race on Tuesday. It was really fun, 5:00 in the morning, which is my my time of day. The night stuff I just can't do.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm dead. So the CVR training is Peaks Training group with Hunter Allen, and it culminates sort of in training camps, in real life, and the way that the training is working is that you are able to have a path to the CVR World Cup through the training, just like you're able to have a path to CVR World Cup through the league. And
so, in other words, you could be racing in the leagues, in the brackets, and depending on if you get the points, etc., that you need, then you move on to live racing, or you could also be doing the training then and be invited to do the live racing, depending on, again, criteria, right?
Yeah. And so I think the easiest way to think about it, well, there's a couple of things that were confusing, and I'll see if I can do a decent job of clearing it up. Was the rankings, which is kind of a new system. They've reworked the rankings, and then there's the league points. And so the league points are, I raced at 5:00 in the morning on Tuesday, so the points that I get are from that league race that I raced against the people at that time slot. That's where I get my points. The rankings is how I'm doing as a racer globally against other racers. So there's, again, high-level math that's way above my ability that's going on. But the league points that you accumulate are in the time slot that you race. Now, you could go out and race any race you wanted to and participate, but they necessarily wouldn't count towards your points because you needed to, sign up and race in the selected time slot that you chose in the beginning. And so you can race up, and that's where a lot of the stronger racers try to go to the elite level and get invited to CVR. In the training, there are other metrics that they're going to be looking at. They're going to be looking at your how well you're training, whether you're doing the group rides, and basically your compliance to a training plan in the way that you're improving. So there's different metrics, and then
Sure.
people will get invited to a training camp, and then people will be able to have a chance to race. And in Paris, the way that it worked when we were there, and this kind of laid some of the foundation, I think, for what they're doing now, is there were 2 heats of women's races, and we were all mixed together. There were pros in both fields of 10. Right, and they took the top finishers of those 2 races and then put those racers in the elite category and then put everyone else in the performance category. So that same thing is going to happen at CVR World Cup, but it's the method to get to those invitations. You have 2 routes, and that keeps it open for everyone because all abilities are welcome, and there's a path to do it, right? So, and certainly Hunter Allen has a pretty good reputation. So, so certainly check out those plans too. It's nice to see all the.
So
options.
there you have it.
Yeah,
lots of options. I mean, it's an exciting winter coming up. It's an exciting season coming up, even if it's not winter for you. There's a lot happening out there.
There's a lot happening, but I think the other thing is drink your tea, get your rest. Right? Because the other thing I've noticed the last couple of weeks is there were a lot of people that have been down with the winter colds. So,
Be smart with your training, yes, and with rest.
Yeah.
Of course, you need the recovery.
Yes.
So.
Yes. All right. Well, I think that wraps us up for today. I think, one last thing I wanted to do is next week is maybe we can talk about like pre-ride or pre-race rituals. Like, what do we do?
That could be fun.
Yeah. So I have some ideas. So if you guys at home have any ideas on what we can include on our next show, let us know. And until next time, I'm Beth York.
And I'm Taya Freestead. Thanks for watching.